Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show here on WFUV. I'm Chris Hennessy, Andrew Galata. We're joined by ESPN's Rich Cimini, New York Jets beat reporter. Rich, thank you for joining us. It is not Saturday, it's Thursday right now. We're about 3 hours out from the Robert Saleh press conference beginning in East Rutherford. So, Rich, we'll start with the obvious and easy one. What are your first thoughts on the head coaching hire, his ability to coach the Jets and get the ship turned around?
Well, for a change, I think the Jets actually got something right. I was on board with this Saleh hire from the beginning. Like when the process started, I just thought he was the most qualified candidate based on their resumes and from what I've been told from my league sources. And then the more investigating and researching I did, I think it just reinforced that. Now, you don't know if the team's going to get him because there was a lot of competition for his services. 5 other teams were interested in him. They interviewed him. But you just don't know. And actually, quite frankly, you don't expect the Jets to win something like that. But they did, to their credit. And I think it's a good hire at the right time. He's got a personality that I think the players will embrace. It's as far away personality-wise from Adam Gase as you can get. So I think that's good. And, it's a good hire. But I've said that in the past, and it's all gone to pieces. So we'll see how it goes.
Just a follow-up on that quickly. So you mentioned 5 other teams are in the running for him. He is probably the most sought-after guy this offseason. What about the Jets draws the big candidate to them for the first time in a long time?
Yeah, I can tell you that very succinctly. It was the second pick in the draft. I mean, that was the the drawing card there. And he was also very interested in the Jaguars for the obvious reason they have the first pick in the draft. And he also worked in Jacksonville for 3 years. And he has a good relationship with the ownership there. And from talking to people who know Robert, they said it was really only 2 teams for him. It was either the Jets or the Jaguars. And the Jaguars told him when they interviewed him, they said, look, we'll be honest with you. We really want Urban Meyer. If we don't get Urban, he'll be our guy. And then he interviewed with a bunch of other teams. And I think he really clicked with Joe Douglas, from what I understand. They both came away feeling really good about it. And so at that point, it was really a no-brainer for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like whenever, NFL teams are rebuilding, their franchise, they always start with GM, coach, quarterback. And right now the Jets, they got their GM, they got their coach to try to turn the culture around. Now it's looking at the quarterback. And in the last week or so, we've heard all this news about Deshaun Watson and all of that noise, how he may want out of Houston. And Adam Schefter said the Jets could be a team to watch out for just with all their picks. And, if he wants to pursue a trade. Do you see the Jets going after Watson? What are your thoughts on that? And just like your opinion.
They should go after Watson. I wrote a story a couple of days ago about that on ESPN.com. I think they will inquire about Watson if they haven't already. I think probably 3/4 of the teams in the league will inquire about Watson. I mean, how could you not? I could probably name 5 teams that wouldn't, and they're, I think 4 of them are playing on Sunday. And other than that, there aren't too many others. So yes, I think there will be some degree of interest. Do I think the Jets will? I'm a little skeptical that Joe Douglas will get into a serious bidding war. I don't think he wants to part with that second pick in the draft. GMs love these draft picks, and to give up 2 or 3 first rounders, I don't know, maybe he will. But the ultimate decision here is ultimately belongs to Deshaun Watson. He has a no trade clause. He can pick his destination. I would be very surprised if he picked the Jets. There are going to be better options. Jets are starting over. No matter what Richard Sherman says on a podcast, Jets are not a desired location right now. It's just not a winning situation yet. And so I think he's going to have better options. I'd be very surprised if the Jets end up with Deshaun Watson.
So Deshaun Watson behind them, the options are down to Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson or any other quarterback that they could draft with a number 2 overall pick. Of those options, who do you see under center next September?
Honestly, if I had to bet right now, I'd probably say Sam Darnold. I think Joe Douglas likes him. He said that publicly. I believe him. I think Robert Saleh really likes him. Now, he hasn't commented on him publicly, but from talking to people who know Robert, they said he and Mike LaFleur, his presumed offensive coordinator, has spent a lot of time watching tape of Sam Darnold, and they just feel that there's a lot of untapped potential there, that he just wasn't used properly in the previous scheme, and they believe they can get him out of him. Now, whether that means, I don't think that means he's definitely coming back next year. There's a lot to consider. There's the players you just mentioned, in the draft to consider. There's some good quarterbacks in the draft. There's the salary cap situation to consider. There's the possible, what would Darnold bring back in a trade? They have to consider that. There's a lot to consider. Personally, I don't know if I'd bring back Darnold. It's very rare for a quarterback who's been mediocre at best over the first 3 years of his career to take a quantum leap. I think maybe the only example you see a Drew Brees, who was really, really underwhelming with the Chargers, and then for his first couple of years, and then of course he blossomed into a Hall of Famer. Other than that, there really aren't any great examples of that. So the Jets would be going against the grain there a little bit, but I just have a feeling they might stick with him.
No, yeah, and I feel like when looking at this Jets team, they were 2-14, but they have a ton of not only cap flexibility, they have number 2 pick. Besides quarterback, what do you feel like the biggest position of need is? And would you go through the salary cap and free agency to try to get that, star marquee player, or do you use the number 2 pick to try to get that first best position of need?
I think it would be easier to answer that question by naming the positions that they don't need anybody, because they have a left tackle in Mekhi Becton. They have a 3-technique defensive tackle in Quinnen Williams. I think they have a pretty good nose tackle in Foley Fatukasi. C.J. Mosley's back at middle linebacker because they just owe him so much guaranteed money. Other than that, there's no one that Denzel Mims will be a starter next year. I still don't know what kind of player he's going to be ultimately, but he'll be back as a starter. But other than that, can you guys, that's about it. You got a lot of positions to fill, and they have a lot of free agent money, which they rolled over. I think it was about $27 million from last year. So they're going to have a ton of money. Will they spend it? I don't know. Joe Douglas is not a fan of free agency. You saw that last year. How much money will the Johnsons be willing to spend? They lost a lot of money in the pandemic, like every other team. So cash could be an issue. Those are big questions. And of course, they have a lot of draft picks. So that's why I think Joe Douglas is really going to value those draft picks.
I just a quick follow up on that. Do you think, because you said Douglas likes to go through the draft, and if they wouldn't go pick a quarterback, would they try to trade out of the number 2 pick to get even more capital, especially if a team likes a Justin Fields or a Zach Wilson, and they're willing to trade a lot to go into that number 2 pick?
Absolutely. I think that is very much on his mind. It's on the table. I think the Jets would love to do something like that. I've even mentioned the Falcons, who have the 4th pick. I think they're going to be looking for a quarterback with a new coach, and they could move up to 2, and the Jets could get easily 2 first, not a 2 draft, like a second, a 2 and a 3, maybe 2 2s, something along those lines to drop a couple of spots. And they'd probably still get the same kind of player at 4 as they would at 2. If they stay at 2, Penei Sewell, the tackle from Oregon, would be very intriguing, or one of those wide receivers. But if you drop to 4, pick up a couple of really good draft picks, you could get a Devontae Smith or a Jamar Chase at 4, or maybe even a Penei Sewell. You never know. So very, very tempting for the Jets to do that.
That's interesting. I find it a tough sell as a Jets fan personally, a tough sell to trade those picks for anything besides Deshaun Watson with how terrible this team is, to pick up 2 second-round picks just to pick Penei Sewell 2 picks later. It doesn't. I don't know. I would really like them to go out and get Deshaun Watson, but we'll see what happens there.
We'll see. I think it's going to be a long-running soap opera. It might go all the way up until the draft before we have some resolution there. I'm sure Houston's going to try to convince him to stand down. I don't know if that's going to be possible. He controls a lot of this, but really Houston has a ton of leverage here because they have him under contract until 2025. So they could just say, sorry, you're going to play for us. It's really kind of similar to the Jamal Adams situation that was brewing a year ago. And I thought Joe Douglas misplayed that badly. I mean, he called Jamal's bluff. He could have traded him before the draft, but he said, we're going to try to work this out. And he called Jamal's bluff, and Jamal, he outfoxed him. And I mean, the Jets did get 2 first-rounders out of it, but I thought Joe Douglas misplayed that.
Yeah. What can back to the coaching hire for a second, what can the Jet fan be excited about with Mike LaFleur coming in to call plays this upcoming season?
Yeah, honestly, guys, I don't know. Mike LaFleur's never been a play caller before, on any level. So, he's been with a really good system. He's been with Kyle Shanahan, who I think is an outstanding play caller. I think at this point, people are getting overly excited because of his last name. We all know he's the younger brother of Matt LaFleur, the Packers coach. So if his last name was Jones, would people be as excited as they are right now? I mean, he's a 34-year-old guy who's coming up through the ranks, and he shows a lot of promise, but he's never done this before. So to me, the jury's still out. I know he'll be running a system that is proven in the NFL. The Jets in the same system in Sam Darnold's 2018 season, his rookie year, same exact system under Jeremy Bates, and so they'll go back to that. And Sam showed some promise at the end of the year in that system. But again, Mike LaFleur, a total neophyte when it comes to calling plays.
Yeah, and just kind of to piggyback on that, do you feel like Sam Darnold, especially coming off of the Gase era, and obviously Gase was calling plays, well, it's kind of like a flux, I guess. Like, you didn't really know, I guess, who was calling plays, who wasn't. It was just such a mess. Like, at least having someone in there, do you feel like that will just help Darnold try to get better and develop, like, under LaFleur, to try to at least know the playbook? It's the same. And, you're hoping that you find, at least just with coaching, that Darnold gets better. Would that be somewhere that at least the Jets are hoping for he can develop more?
Yeah, I do not think he was coached well the last 2 years. I like Adam a lot personally. Contrary to what people might think, we actually have a good relationship. I just don't think he was coached well. I thought the front office did a horrible job of putting players around him. Joe Douglas even admitted that at midseason. They just did a bad job. And so if they put better players around him and they put him in a system that I think is very quarterback friendly, which the Shanahan system is, I think you could see some improvement for Sam. I don't think Sam is ever going to be what everyone thought he'd be. He's not going to be an elite quarterback. The best you could hope for is that he can get to a middle of the league level, like maybe in the 15 to 18 range of quarterbacks, and be kind of a game manager. That kind of quarterback. If you build around him and have a strong defense, he can be that kind of quarterback because he has talent. You've seen him make spectacular plays, either running or throwing. He's got to improve his decision making, and I don't think he reads defenses very well. And so he's going to have to really be coached up. Like I said earlier, you just don't see quarterbacks, all of a sudden go like this and then like that. It doesn't really happen too often in the NFL.
You mentioned Adam Gase. Although he is no longer employed by the Jets, it's still interesting to see where he ends up. There's been some very reliable rumors that have him connected to the Seahawks offensive coordinator position. I saw maybe something a little less reliable has been connected to the Eagles head coaching position. Where do you see Adam Gase ending up at the end of this season? And if it's in Seattle, quite the interesting dynamic between reuniting him and his former safety.
He's not going to be a head coach ever again in the NFL. He's not going to end up in Seattle. I'd be very surprised. He did talk to some people in Seattle. I think he knows some people in the building there. I do not believe. I think it was portrayed as an interview that, from the way I was told, it wasn't even an interview with the Seahawks. He was just talking to some people in the building. I do not see that as a possibility. From what I've been told, people who know Gase really well, I think he's just going to sit out the year. He's still under contract for 2 more years. The Jets are paying him. probably about $5 million a year for the next 2. So I think he's probably going to sit out if I had to guess.
And just, one more thing for me. I read something yesterday. I thought it was really interesting that the Johnsons said they were considering changing the organizational structure. I know under Adam Gase, it was like Gase would report to the owners and so would the GM, which, an NFL franchise is definitely unorthodox. What do you feel like the odds of that changing and more of the owner, GM, head coaching kind of structure there?
Yeah, it's not so unorthodox. I think you're seeing more and more teams do that kind of structure. I don't particularly care for it, only because when you do it that way, when you have the coach and GM both report to the owner, you have to have a good owner, who knows the NFL. And the Jets don't have an owner who knows the NFL. Christopher Johnson is a relative neophyte at it. He's just only done it for 3 years. So, Woody Johnson's coming back. I still don't think he's equipped to do that. If you're talking about the Rooney family or Robert Kraft, or if the Maras want to do something like that, I think that would be more acceptable. I just think the Jets should have a reporting structure where the GM is in charge and the coach reports to him. I don't know. Hopefully we get some clarity on that at the press conference. My hunch is they'll keep it the same based on what I've been hearing. So I think people put too much into that. I think ultimately, if you have the right people, it'll work no matter what. The Jets' problem is they never hire the right people. So let's see if they have the right people this time.
So we'll get you out of here on this one. It's been a very long 10 years since the Jets were on this weekend, but who do you like this weekend and why? And give us your little preview of the last 3 games of this season.
Yeah, I'm going with the home teams. Kansas City, I think Mahomes will be fine with his concussion. I think Buffalo, I'd love to see Buffalo do it. I used to cover a lot of Bills games back in the day when I was working at Newsday, and the Bills were making the playoffs and the Super Bowl every year. They used to send me up to Buffalo to cover the playoffs. So I ended up covering all 4 of those Super Bowls and probably almost every one of their playoff games. So I feel kind of an attachment to that city. So I'm hoping the Bills can do it. I just think they're too one-dimensional on offense to be that kind of team. I don't know if when you play Kansas City, you have to slow the game down. You have to keep Mahomes off the field. And I just don't know if the Bills are equipped to do that. So I'm going to take Kansas City, and I like Green Bay. I think the elements, Brady, he played his whole career in cold weather. But when you get older and you spent a lot of time in 70-degree weather in Florida, and you have to go back into the cold, it's a little tougher for older players. They don't want to get hit. And so that entire Tampa Bay team, not used to the elements up there. I think this is just Rodgers' year. I could easily see them winning the Super Bowl. I think what he's done is tremendous. He'll win the MVP this year. So I'm taking the 2 home teams.
Thanks a lot, Rich. Rich Cimini, ESPN.com's New York Jets beat reporter. We'll be back with one-on-one after this short break.